Hi, in this lecture, you will learn what the DML triggers are in details, what the old and new qualifiers are, statements and row level triggers, and more with all the details. And in the next few lectures, we will make examples for all these contents. Great, let's start with what the DML triggers are and why we need that briefly. Then we will explain how to create them. DML triggers are code blocks that run with the specified DML events. These events are inserts, updates, and deletes. Actually, there is one more trigger above that instead of triggers, but you will see that in the further lectures. It can be confusing for now. Alright, we use DML triggers for many purposes like duplicating the tables, creating and maintaining log tables, securing the tables for invalid data entries, etc. You will understand better when you see the usages. Great. So let's open up our schema for showing the existing DML triggers and explain the new terms on it. As you can see in that schema, we start creating the triggers with create or replace trigger keywords. As you know, or replace is for refreshing the trigger, just the same as the previous usages of different objects like procedures, packages, etc. Then we write the name of the trigger. After that, we write the timing indicator of the trigger. So what are these timing indicators? We have three different options for that. If we select before, the trigger will be fired right before the specified DML event. For example, if we are making an update, this trigger will be executed right before that update statement. If we select after, the trigger will be fired after the execution of that specific update. If you select the instead of option, this time the trigger will be executed instead of that update. We will see that more detailed in the further lectures. So we have three options for timing the execution of a trigger. But the main thing in here is we need to select one of these. We cannot select many of them in one trigger. We will see that more detailed in the next lectures. Alright, after specifying the timing of the trigger, we need to specify the event that when this trigger will run. I mean, which event will fire that trigger. For that, we have four options: insert, update, delete, and update of options. Actually, you must have understood the first three. That means if you select insert, this trigger will be fired when an insert occurs of that table. So when insert is selected, but the others are not selected, that trigger will be executed only for the inserts. The updates and deletes will not make the trigger execute. But you can select more than one with the same trigger. I mean, you can say to your trigger that execute when any update or delete or insert happens. If we want to select multiple, add or keyword between them. So we can select one of them or two or three of them, but we cannot select update and update of events together in one trigger. So what is that update of option? As you know from our SQL lessons, insert and delete are row-based operations. If you insert something, you insert a complete row. If you delete something, you delete the whole row. You cannot delete a specific column. You can set to null or something, but you cannot delete. But in updates, it is different because the update is done for the columns. So in here, sometimes you may want to say that execute this trigger when an update occurs in this column list. For example, if you think about the employees table, we can say that if any update occurs in the salary of the employees table, execute that trigger. Or we can select more than one column by separating them with comma signs. We will make examples of them. Then we write on keyword and the object name. The objects can be a table or a view for the DML triggers. Actually, As we have seen up to now, we can say that we say to our trigger that run, execute, or fire, however we call it, before or after or instead of any insert, update, or delete occurs in the specified table or view. So here we can say that DML triggers are bounded to a table or view. So if any DML event occurs on that table or view, the Oracle server will automatically run all the triggers created on this table or view. That means we can have so many triggers on the same table. They will all be executed when the events that we specify occur. Alright, then we write our referencing old as old and new as new keywords. So what are these keywords then? You will see them more detailed in the next lectures, but for now, let me try to explain you briefly. Execution of a DML trigger indicates that there is a difference in the specified table. So there is an action, there is a change in a row. And that means there are new and old values of these columns. Let's say if you updated a column value from 3 to 5, triggers can know both 3 and 5. This is really important in triggers because you may need to take different actions using the old values or the new ones. This new and old indicates the old and new values of that row and its columns. We can reach to these values by using colon sign old.column_name or colon sign new.column_name. We will see them better in the further lectures. But this referencing old as old or new as new means specifying aliases for the old and new identifiers. We can specify X and Y for old and new identifiers. So you can reach to old values of a column with writing colon sign y.column_name. You will understand better when you see the examples. Then we write the for each row if we want to make our trigger as row level trigger. We have two types of DML triggers, row level triggers and statement level triggers. Row level triggers fire on the DML of each row and statement level triggers fire only for the statement. I will explain them in details in the next lectures. But for now, I'm trying to show you the whole picture of triggers in one step to make you understand the triggers easier. I will give all the details in the further lessons. So you will be able to understand these details better within the next lectures. The last new thing about the triggers is when clause. With the when clause, you can restrict the event of our trigger. How? We know that we can say to our trigger that execute when an update occurs, for example. Then we can restrict this event by saying that execute when an update occurs in the specific columns. With this when clause, we can restrict the execution with one more level and say that execute when this condition returns true. For example, we can say that execute if the salary is greater than 50,000 or something like that. We will make examples for that too. Then, if we need to declare any variables, types, etc., we write the declare keyword to be able to declare these objects. The rest is just like a standard PL/SQL block. We write our begin end block and the exception section if we wish. The whole business logic of that trigger will be written between the begin and end keywords, as you can see. This area is called as trigger body. The executable statements are written right here, but there is one difference here. It is for the procedure usages. If you want to call only one procedure in a trigger, unlike a standard PL/SQL block, you can call them with using the call clause. We simply write call and our procedure name. But this time you cannot write begin end blocks. But you can use a procedure instead of a begin end block too. This call statement is just for simplicity. If you will call a single procedure, you simply write call keyword before it. Just like how we did with the execute command. We will use it in our examples, so don't worry. Alright, in this lecture, I tried to show you the whole picture of a DML trigger so that you will be able to understand better when I start explaining the details. In the next lectures, you will see all these with the examples and details. But for now, let me inform you again about the importance of triggers. Triggers will be one of the most used PLSQL objects in your real work. Besides, triggers are not so easy to understand. Sometimes it may be hard to understand for the first time. If so, watch the video again and again until you understand completely. This course is a detailed course, so I try to explain all the details of each subject. Because of that, sometimes you may learn so many things in a short time and it might be hard to learn with all the details. So listen carefully, do all the examples with me, and if you cannot understand, watch the videos over and over again until you learn them all. On the other hand, once you complete this section, you will be learned all the details of triggers with so many examples. So, as I said, this was just for an introduction to the DML triggers briefly. In the next lectures, you will see these statements with so many details and examples. So this is the end of this lecture. See you in the next lectures.